Atamaria kia koutou. Welcome to this meeting of Council. Welcome to Council staff. Welcome to elected members. We've got some community board members at the table today. Welcome. We've got some external presenters today and also some members of the public. Welcome. And we'll start with the Council blessing. Ia mātou e whiriwhiri ana, I ngā take ke mua ia mātou aro. E pono ana mātou ka kaha tonu ki te whakapau mahara huapai mō na hapori e mahi ne mātou. Me kahi hoki mātou katoa ki a whaihua, ki a tōtika ta mātou mahi, a ma te maia te tira whakamua me te hihiri ka taia te arahi I roto I te kotahitanga me te aroha. We'll move on now to apologies. Do we have any apologies for this meeting? Just looking to Democracy Services? No apologies. Any declarations of interest relating to items on the agenda? Don't appear to be any. 5 and 6, we don't have anything. 7, public speaking time relating to the agenda. Do we have anybody today? No? Sorry, we do. Yes. Welcome, Glenn Wiggs. So we have Glenn Wiggs and John Tocker from the Wainuiwhenua Residents Society. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. We want to talk about the report, the Hall report. Basically, we represent here today the Wainuiwhenua Beach Residents Society. Wainuiwhenua Beach is an area which you all know, no doubt you've been told before, with the highest rates and the lowest facilities. We have no playing fields, and we have one small community hall with a 15% earthquake rating. Interestingly, in the report, once again, we've been lumped in with Wainuiwhenua. Now, it takes about 10 minutes for me to get from my place to Mahara Place. It took me 8 minutes to get here today. So things have changed. And so when you talk about Wainuiwhenua Beach is a separate community and must be judged separately. One of the problems is that we've got a hall which is of the highest single-use hall, but as you know, it's unrealistic. Most of you have been there. It's unrealistic. It's unsatisfactory. We need not a replacement hall, but a new hall. And John Tocker, who's an architect, will now talk about that.
Thank you.
Could you pass the microphone over, please?
Right.
Just for the purposes of live streaming and those online.
Is that better?
Thank you.
Okay. Some of you have heard this before. I know Nigel has. Yes, with the existing hall at only 15% of national building standards, and the allocation of funding for that is out in 2028 and is just over $1 million. I've been advised by QSs that we can expect increased costs in the construction industry of 12 to 15% over coming years, as has happened over the past years. If you turn that $1.064 million into net present value and you revert it back to 2023, that's worth $561,000. And actually that's not enough to even fix the existing hall. So the allocation of funding is insufficient now, in my opinion, to actually even make the hall compliant, because it won't be enough in 2028. It's also deemed to have a 4-year usable period, but with 15% NBS. If that was a primary school, I very much doubt whether it would be even occupied. People would not occupy with their children a school that had 15%, why would we have a 15% NBS hall occupied in Wainuiwhenua Beach? So we need to do something now rather than in 4 years. The current hall is not fit for purpose. It's not digitally connected. It's too small. It has little appeal as a space. It's too narrow. It has no parking on site. It's on a narrow site that is not suitable for redevelopment. There's no associated outside space. There's a little pocket handkerchief that you can't access at the back. And so therefore, we need a new site for a new hall. There have been other sites identified that have been discussed by the Resident Society. Potentially there's one in Queen's Drive on the existing open area adjacent to the children's playground and the lagoon. And there's also been a site identified on land currently controlled by Wakakotahi beside the expressway. Either of those would be on the right side of the expressway for the Wainuiwhenua Beach community and could be accessed. And in terms of costs, we have done some work on costs based on a similar community centre that our company did for the Heathcote community in Christchurch a few years ago. And in real money terms, that's worth about $3 million in today's money. If you kick the can down the road and you apply the increased costs, and by 2028, that'll be 5.4 million. So actually, sooner is both better and cheaper. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. We'll take questions now from elected members. Councillor Wilson.
It's not really a question, just thank you very much for coming along and noting the urgency of this. In terms of the association itself, at the AGM, there was discussion around the two sites, but is there progress being made in determining a preferable site, whether it be the Queen's Drive or the Wakakotahi? Because if it's the Wakakotahi site, we'd need to start initiating some discussions as soon as possible, right?
I don't think there is a stated preference at this stage, no. The Wakakotahi site is very dependent on availability and negotiations for Wakakotahi, whereas the Queen's Drive site council already have control.
Yep. And so has the association had any, has the residents had any discussions with Wakakotahi at all?
No.
No, okay. Or it's something we could initiate?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, guys.
Mr. Mansell.
Thank you, Glenn, John. Richard Mansell, Chair of the Wainuiwhenua Community Board. You came and talked to us recently. I'm just looking at the percentage usage, 22% of the available time that it is used. Has your society got any opinion on the dual use with other facilities? I'm thinking perhaps an accommodation could be made with the likes of maybe the golf club or the bowling club or one of the churches. Have you considered that if council took over a lease and then subleased it on?
Yes, that's in fact that was a recommendation was made in the report about how perhaps getting together with the boat club. The problem is that every Saturday morning is a yoga class, and having a yoga class either at the golf club or the boating club on a Saturday morning wouldn't go down very well with the members. As far as the boat club is concerned, they've now got resource consent and now awaiting their building consent, so their plans are well advanced. But basically what it's going to be is a bar and a restaurant, and that's not a community hall. This would be more suitable for a community hall. And the golf club is the same, particularly in the weekends. It's very busy. In fact, the golf club is busy every day of the week, and I don't think the facilities there are suitable for community activities and public meetings and all the rest of it. But it's better value to actually build a new one, sell off the old one. There'll be some money for that, and for 3 million, and already you've allocated 1 million in the future. It's only 2 million to go. So that's our firm recommendation.
And the other part of that is that if you want to have a community hall that's available for multiple users, then you need a higher stud than is available if you're going to have sports activities for rangatahi, then you need a higher stud than is available in any of those locations.
Thank you.
Sorry, it does get the third highest use,
Yes.
and the community halls with higher use have 2 usable spaces or 4 usable spaces. We have 1 usable space. So in actual fact, per usable space, it is the most used hall in Kapiti.
Thank you. Just another question. You say that you see yourself as a separate part of the district from Wainuiwhenua Township. Wainuiwhenua Township has 2 current halls and will be building a hub space in the library of some form. Do you think Wainuiwhenua in general is oversubscribed for hall space, and that seems to be dominated by the village rather than the beach?
Well, as I say, the most used one is the Wainuiwhenua Memorial Hall. The second most used one is the Paraparam Memorial Hall, and the third most used one is the Wainuiwhenua Beach Hall. I don't think we're overhauled at the moment, no. I thought it was a good word, yes. Certainly Wainuiwhenua Beach is not. And I know it is a separate community, and we regard ourselves as a separate community.
Thank you. Just on a side note here, we're about to start a visioning process for Wainuiwhenua and the district overall, and it's interesting that you say that you're a separate community, because we're, as elected members, are being asked to identify our separate communities and see whether how they will wish to have their needs met over the next 40 years. So,
I would remind people at this table that there has already been a very extensive visioning for Wainuiwhenua Beach, and Council sponsored it. It was undertaken by well-known Urban Perspectives some years ago, and Council has to date failed entirely to put any of those recommendations in place.
I think we'll just note that. Thank you.
Thank you for that sobering reminder. Thanks for coming and presenting today. I agree that community spaces are really important, and I'm not convinced that the asset management plan adequately addresses the issue of Wainuiwhenua Beach Hall. I think it's a conversation that needs to happen, as I said at the Residents Association AGM on the weekend before last. So we've heard what you have to say today, and we'll certainly be trying to progress something in that space. And I'll just let the Chief Executive respond as well. We don't usually have speaking time responses, but I think this is quite a significant issue.
Thanks, Your Worship. Look, thanks for coming and speaking with us this morning and bringing this to our attention. The asset management plan, or the report that's in front of Council today, is the start of a discussion building towards our long-term planning cycle. It's that 3-year cycle that looks out 10 years or 20 years and beyond. So you make some really good points. What I will say is it is a start point for us, and it's about understanding the current state of the stock that we have, noting the age of our community halls, and how we stretch that rubber band to ensure that we're able to deliver really, really good community facilities for our people in our community. So again, acknowledge the the content of what you've brought to us today, and thank you for reminding us about the visioning work, because at times, through 3-year cycles and through changes, we sometimes need to be reminded of what we've done before to bring back to make that relevant. So I appreciate those comments.
Thanks for your time today. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it. We now have Lynn Sleeth speaking about the cycleways, walkways and bridleways item.
I've got a handout here. Want somebody
Welcome, Lynn.
organise that?
Somebody will come and grab that.
Okay, good morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity here.
Thanks, Lynn.
I'm not going to speak in detail to the handout, but I've got two points that I wanted to emphasise here. Those of you who don't know me, I'm the Secretary of Capital Cycling Action. We are a cycle advocacy group. I'm also a member of 3 walking groups and a convener of one of those groups. So I'm pretty strong on active transport. This is a bit like Mark Antony and Julius Caesar's the speech about Julius Caesar's death, so I feel a bit emotional about this. I'd like to congratulate Bruce Henderson and the members of the CWBAG for their work. He'll be telling you a little bit about their work shortly. And I'd also like to thank the Council's media staff for doing some publicity about what this group does. And I think Bruce mentions in the start of his presentation about the fact that this is an acronym that's not particularly well known. In my handout, I've got 2 suggestions. I wanted to make some positive suggestions because I think the group is good. The council obviously feels it's going the right way. I sense that there's a stream there that's all flowing the same way. There's no major issues in the group, so I want the group to work better. I have given Bruce an indication of those 2 issues, so he's had a few days to think about it. My first point was about advocacy, and I thought that Councillor Coe's question to the Environment Committee last month, where they received the same presentation, was very perceptive. She asked about whether or not people who are all flowing the same way in this stream, helping the council staff, could also step away and also be advocates. I think that was a very good question, and I think it's a question my group is also struggling with as well. In case you don't know what we do as an advocacy group, Bruce will be telling you about Coast 35, which is the new pathway which goes up to Otaki. You wouldn't have that pathway without our group, because the Waka Kotahi refused to put a shared pathway on that project beyond Peka Peka. This council was unwilling, when we came here and talked to them, to fight against that. It was only because we took action along with ex-councillor James Cootes that was approved. So at times we do get offside with the status quo, and we do reserve the right to object. So we're not a group that necessarily makes friends with everyone, but we would like respect. So I'm just putting that in context there. So I'm suggesting that the group does need to step out away from its internal work and publicise itself better. I think recognising that the members of the group can't always be advocates, I would like to see it engage better with advocacy groups. My group is a cycling group. Living Streets, Aotearoa is a walking group. There are plenty of other advocate groups around. And I think the group needs to recognise that it does need to do some outside engagement as well. And I suggested a communications plan, and I think Bruce is thinking about that already. The second point is an ex-member of the Road Safety Advisory Group, which has now been defunct for 3 years, and there was a gap there where the council is not getting input from the community about road safety matters. The CWB now seems to be doing on-road matters as well. It traditionally was a recreational walking and cycling group, but now it does on-road matters as well. I see no reason really why that group could not enlarge its scope to cover road safety matters as well. You might need a couple more representatives. I know Bruce is putting small wheels on. The road safety group had people who were certainly vulnerable road users. They were in wheelchairs, they were on mobility scooters and the like. I think that representation could happen as well. So that's a second suggestion that I'm making to you, which I'd like the group to CWB to consider. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. These are both really good suggestions, and we have 2 elected members who represent us on the CWB, so we'll make sure that these suggestions are brought back to the group for progress. In terms of amending the terms of reference, I'm keen to accept the terms of reference as recommended by the group today, apart from one minor change, which I'll be suggesting. But in terms of adding swathes of information like a comms plan, I suggest we take these suggestions back to the group for their consideration, and I'm sure that they'll progress them, because certainly some really good stuff in here. And we'll also encourage our comms staff to be alongside to help with that communications and engagement with the group. So thanks for your suggestions today.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll be sure to progress. Are there any questions from elected members? Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you very much.
Right, that concludes public speaking time. So we move on to members' business. Do we have any leaves of absence that people would like to share with the group today? Otherwise, you can contact my office and DEM services with any requests. No? I haven't been advised of any matters of an urgent nature. There's nothing for item 9, so we're diving into our reports. Before we do that, there is an event happening over at the library that I know Councillor Spires needs to attend at 10:30. So, and the rest of us are welcome to attend as well. I'll share that with you. It's a book launch for the Kapiti Arts Studio, and Kathy Spires' sister's book is being launched. So, very important family occasion for Councillor Spires, and also a nice event for us to pop over to if we can break at 10:30. But what I'm keen to do is get through the first report first, Wainuiwhenua project, and if that's completed by 10:30, then we'll take a break so that we can attend that event. So, I welcome people to the table. We have Greater Wellington Regional Councillor for Kapiti, Penny Gaylor, attending today. And have we got Darren online? While I'm talking about online, I'd also like to acknowledge that Hurawai Paki, representing Ngāti Toa Rangatira, is online, and Denise Hapata, representing Ngā Hapu Otaki, is also online. Welcome to both of them. So Darren's not online, so Penny, you're here with us to represent Greater Wellington. Welcome, and I'll hand over to staff.
Kia ora koutou. Good morning, everyone. I just want to start off this morning by recognising some of the partners who are here with us in person and online, who've been supporting some of this mahi as it's progressed over a number of years now. And also just wanted to pass on apologies from the co-chair of the Wainuiwhenua group, Jenny Rowan, who wasn't able to make it here today, so she did send her apologies. I just want to provide a little brief introduction to the report in front of us today. And a bit of context. So first of all, the report in front of you is looking to note the progress on the Wainuiwhenua project to date. A lot of good work has been undertaken where, as a community-led initiative, a community proposal has been developed, identifying opportunities for how surplus land from Transmission Gully could be used to support a range of public purposes across the area that can support mana whenua, local community outcomes in Paikokariki, but also across the district and broader region as well. And the paper today follows a recent briefing that was provided on the project in May, where a range of the project partners were able to come along and provide some of that background briefing, and also a recent update that was provided to Whakaminenga in June ahead of this paper. As well as noting just the background and progress to date, the report seeks ongoing support from Council to undertake further scoping work to support some initial options and guidance that has emerged from how the project might progress to the next stages. In particular, this is looking to work further with our partners to scope options and pathways for securing potential land, And that also includes the ownership and or management that could sit alongside some of those proposed public uses in time. And just to note that to date, there's been draft processes and options proposed. There's no decisions been made, and the intention is to undertake that further work to understand in detail the options for that ownership management and also the potential costs and benefits around the project longer term, to bring back to Council for decisions, but also to help inform future decisions around the long-term plan, which, as mentioned in the previous discussion, is the document which sets out the financial planning for Council over the next 3+ years into the future. So very much work to continue progressing towards achieving the outcomes of the project, and happy to take the project and the report as read, and happy to answer questions, but also, just leave it there.
Thanks, Hamish. I also want to acknowledge the work that you've been doing on this, turning up to meetings that go quite late in Paikakariki over the past few years, and really supporting that group with this mahi. So thank you so much for what you've contributed. I'll invite Councillor Gaylor if you've got anything to add. No? All good. So do I have any questions from elected members?
Yep.
Councillor Coe.
I have two. Just looking at the financial implications of this work, and the costs seem to me to be extremely modest. Have we provided enough? Because this is a significant piece of work, and we're talking about a very strategic asset for our region. Are we, sort of underplaying it in terms of what the cost might be, and are we being overly reliant on a lot of volunteer input from unpaid people in our community to?
I think they're very willing, unpaid volunteers.
Yeah, but this community relies very heavily on volunteers. But I just, so that's one question. The other question really is about Te Ātiawa and their involvement. It seems to me they've been, perhaps brought into the picture a little bit late in the piece, shall we say, and how is that being addressed? Those are the two questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
With regards to the first question about the costs and benefits of the project, that's one of the core purposes of the additional work we're seeking to undertake with Greater Wellington as one of the other partners, and Ngāti Taua Rangatira and the wider Wainuiwhenua group as well. And that will be to have an understanding in more detail around some of those proposed uses and across the site, but also to understand what future costs for potential capital and operational support for some of those purposes, including the potential around those uses as a recreational. There's a variety of them, and that's the purpose of that further work, is to scope and understand those, to bring them back to the table, so we do have a better understanding to help inform decisions from that point forward.
I just want to add to this to say, currently, Council has mandated support for this piece of work in an administrative sense. So we're actually seeking your agreement that we're providing some policy support to this as it's progressing. And then, as Hamish has said, I think a bigger case would come to the table once we've undertaken that work. So I guess from a clear sort of accountability and transparency perspective, we're making sure that you're clear on what's happening, how we're involved, and that we haven't gone past what you'd previously agreed that we would do. So the bit in there around the financial resourcing and a half a person is actually just to acknowledge that point, rather than that's all that it's going to take. It will be a lot more.
Yeah, so those are the costs just for that initial scoping exercise, which will be done to fit in with the LTP timeframes?
Sorry, yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. It just wasn't clear what the it would. I know it's a little bit difficult with such a complex project, but I was trying to get a sense of the timeline and the key dates, and at some point it would be helpful to have a bit more structure around that. Yeah.
We'll bring that back as part of the further work we're doing. We're looking to be able to undertake this work to help inform early decisions around the long-term planning process, so towards the end of this year, early next.
Right, okay, and the second question about Te Ātiawa involvement?
So the paper recognises interest and potential overlaps with the area with Te Atiawa, Whakarongotai. We had recent discussions at Te Whakaminenga where there was an interest in support and linkage made to the project and supporting outcomes in the area, and there was an undertaking for further discussions to occur, and we're also looking to include at an operational level the Taio unit in discussions going forward alongside the working group that we've had to date. I'm not sure if there's any of our
Yeah, I'll add
partners
to
on.
that. So Ngāti Toa and Te Atiawa are talking amongst themselves about how they link up and their various interests in this project. And as I understand it, those discussions are going very well. Councillor Cooper?
Yeah, I had similar questions to Liz, actually. I note that Baro Finley have noted the land is not surplus and will not be for the immediate future. And I'd be interested in the immediate future. We've got the Te Atiawa Waitangi Tribunal in progress, and potentially that could be 10 years away. And would be my summation, and it may be a wrong summation, but that entire block of land may actually be subject to that ruling, so that maybe that all that land goes to Te Atiawa as part of that treaty settlement. So it'd be interesting to understand what immediate future means. Is immediate future 10 years? And if so, if that's the case, or even 5 to 10 years away, and it's just why are we spending money and a considerable amount of money now when it may be an absolute moot point? I understand we should do work and look at investigating partnerships, but I don't understand getting complex legal and spending money on legal stuff when this may just be absolute waste of time.
Thank you. I think I'll come back with two things, Councillor Cooper. The first is that the comments around the treaty claim and settlement process. If a piece of land is identified as part of a claim, it is land banked, and your point about it not being able to be utilised is true. However, councils are in I'd say a prime position to partner with iwi to utilise the land, even though that's true. So if we're in a partnership with our iwi partners around a piece of land of interest, you can move forward with plans. So that's one thing. The second thing is there's also a disposal process that comes into play that incorporates the Public Works Act, which is part of why Greater Wellington and us have been looking at this with our iwi partners to see what the best way forward is. The reason that we've sought independent legal advice is to just really understand between the three, and I'll say when I mean three, Greater Wellington, the District Council and our iwi partners, whoever that is, what sort of arrangements would best suit us being able to move forward so that we can work out that time frame. So there's been, I'm not going to say there's confusion, but it hasn't been as clear as it could be, the pathway forward, and that's what we've been looking at to date.
Just one other piece of context to add to that is that where Crown land is disposed of, there's usually a timing and process around that. So that is one of the drivers around the timing of undertaking this work, to understand what those options are and be ready to move once the surplus land is looked to be to be disposed of, once the transmission gully project has been fully completed. So that's one of the drivers around the timeframes alongside those other 2 points that you're talking about the why and the need to be prepared for the opportunity. Otherwise, it could be an opportunity missed once that process is commenced. If we're not in a position to move forward and understand how we want to move forward as a council, then or partnership, then that opportunity could slide by and be lost.
Okay, thank you. Just a question then a comment. Page 1148, the report does not identify legal issues or risks at this point. Are we anticipating to be seeking more legal advice with the budget? Are we expecting to be spending more money on more legal advice? And if so, how much?
Correct. There's an allocation identification for council's part in that under paragraph 46. And we also have a role and wear a hat in supporting processes through the disposals process as a council. So there is some staff time involved in that. But we have indicated that as we identify those options and processes further, we will need to be supported by legal advice to bring those options and seek decisions from you at the next stage.
Okay, so that 46, that 0.5 full-time equivalent, and the 30,000 that's noted there, so is that for the full-time equivalent and legal advice, or for the 0.5 equivalent and indicating that there'd be more money spent for legal advice? Or is that the total budget for everything?
No, it's not the total budget. So we're seeking agreement to have policy engagement in this process. The legal advice, if required further down the track, we're coming back to you with next steps and options, and we'd be looking to manage that within our legal budget. So we're not going to ask you for additional funds or spend. We'd be prioritising our legal budget for this advice if necessary. And just to note that I think one of the benefit of being in partnership with Greater Wellington and also our iwi partners is we're working together and we are sharing advice in the way forward, so that we are looking at minimising the obvious burden to ratepayers as much as we can.
Magic. And my question as a comment would be that I actually quite like the aspirations of the project. It looks like a fantastic project. My concern would be the cost on a project that could be a decade away. But thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cooper. Mr. Butler.
Window 1, apparently. Through you, Madam Mayor. I have to admit that I actually hail from Tamaki Makaurau, and pre the Super City, the Auckland Regional Council looked after all of the regional parks. So I was just wondering, with the looking at here of this being owned and run by iwi, Greater Wellington and KCDC, is that the standard operating procedure for a district council to be part of the ownership of a regional park, if we're talking about this being a regional park?
I don't know that we're talking about it being a regional park. There's a variety of uses that have been identified for the land.
Just in the report I did read that they're talking about it being
it's
a
one of
regional park.
the potential for the broader recreational opportunities in the area and the significance of that. But council, I guess some of the linkages sitting across Kapiti Coast District Council and with Greater Wellington Regional Council are with its commensurate responsibility. So one is the park side of it sits with the Greater Wellington Regional Council, but for Kapiti, supporting local outcomes, also supporting, and that can have a recreational lens at a localised level, but in particular potential for housing is something that sits within the mandate and responsibilities of district councils and not a regional council.
Yep,
so that's where some of the multiple uses and the partnership approach for the range of uses is the approach that we've been working along to date.
Okay, and will KCDC look at using some of the land for housing outside of the treaty or the iwi claim areas?
I think that's part of the next phase of work, Kim. And so we're looking at it from at this stage wide lens, so housing, economic development. There's a lot of opportunity in that space. Recreation, and so the next phase of work would be coming back to look at what are those options, what is our role in that.
Cool.
But I think
so I was getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, you are, but you're on the right track though. So yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, just on that, in terms of potentials, there's creating a new regional park. So my concern about creating a new regional park that is managed, owned, if you like, by entities other than the regional council might include the whole of Queen Elizabeth Park being something that this council then has a role in, which I don't think it should. It's a regional park. So I would be separating out those functions that Queen Elizabeth Park is Greater Wellington's asset and responsibility. We just happen to be the beneficiaries of it being the best park in the country.
Is there
I think
a question in there?
Yeah, so the question is that they have a view to separating out those functions and the management, right? Because there is a concern that you would just lump it all together. To Glenn's point about with a treaty claim, Whitireia Park in Porirua is a good example where that was administered by Greater Wellington. In a relationship with Ngāti Toa, it became part of the treaty, Ngāti Toa's treaty settlement, and basically it just carried on business as usual. So the ownership's there, but in terms of the management, etc., that just carried on under Greater Wellington. So my question is, because given that Penny's sitting here, I just wanted to know that Greater Wellington is fully committed to this all the way through, because there will be more costs identified. So I just wanted to know that because this is a brilliant project, actually, it has to be said, that Greater Wellington is completely committed.
Thank you for that long preamble and question. We're just waiting for the microphone for Councillor Gaylor.
Drum roll. Thank you very much. In response to Councillor Wilson, totally 100% committed. We've been in the tent, shall we say, from not as early as KCDC, because it was KCDC who first responded to the community bringing this through into the table. But then I kind of brought us into the tent. The first person I brought into that tent was Chair Councillor Darren Ponter, who was going to be online today. So, he's very much in support of it, and have at various times checked in with my colleagues, and we're all there across it and supportive. The fact that the Chair's executive or special assistant, Amanda Cox, who used to be the big cheese of the park, she is assigned to working on this. And so when you're looking at your numbers in your paper, that I presume it doesn't include the numbers that we've committed into the project, and we're financially supporting Amanda's time and others, and we're also making sure we pay some legal bills when necessary. So totally, we're across it, and I'm very happy to be supporting it. And it's actually one of 3 special projects in our region that is kind of above and beyond and slightly outside of the usual LT process that we have done, but we have made it a priority. Thank you.
Yeah, I actually attended the council meeting where the scoping was put on the table, and the support around the table was very strong at that time. And I understand the new council is also in support at a political level. Deputy Mayor Kirby.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a short question from me. Reading through the report, the obvious sticking point at the moment is a Section 40 response from the government. Do we have any idea on timeframes of that? Do we need to put some more pressure to get something happening before the election in that space? So there's 2 questions there.
I think we have followed up. I may be slightly wrong in that, but I know we were looking to follow up on that initial letter that was sent some months back now. And if we haven't, we will be. And hopefully we can get an indication from that piece of work. That said, it doesn't prevent us from doing some of this wider due diligence and working through work. It's a key decision, but it doesn't stop us or prevent us from doing that other preparation and understanding that needs to occur. But we can come back and let the table or council know, or through the mayor, if that's all right, if we need to follow up around the project, around that letter and request.
It seems to me from the report that the letter was sent in February, and we haven't had a response yet, and we're July. Does our local MP for the Mana electorate know about this situation?
I think local MP is aware and been part of the early processes, and there has been communications to help support the project and to make linkages with other appropriate ministers around the process, but I'll have to check in and confirm back just where that request is at and whether we have in fact followed up on it.
Okay, great. I think we could probably, being election cycle, we could probably put some pressure there to get a response, because that seems to be the sticking point for further progress on this awesome project.
Sorry, if I may note as well that Waka Kotahi obviously will be going through their usual process around surplus land, and it may be that ministers are waiting for a response from the agency, so that I think some of you will be aware that they did have some challenges in making sure that they've met all the compliance requirements around consenting and such things around transmission gully, and it may be that they're still working through some finer details of that, which is why we've I guess been patiently waiting to see where they're at in that process. And then we're also very aware that our Waka Kotahi colleagues have let us know that with the severe weather events up north, they have had to refocus some energy and effort up that way. So hence why we are checking in, but also we're just acknowledging the context that we're operating in.
Yeah, in short, the project isn't finished yet, and that's a big sticking point. Councillor Gaylor would like to respond to this as well.
Thank you. And I just think perhaps it's been a kind of a staff response about, you know, what the process is across organisations, between organisations. As a political person, I would say that Barbara Edmonds, as the Mana MP, is well across this and incredibly supportive, to the point of having meetings with me, with the chair, with the mayor, with very much across it with the local councillor. I know that, I don't think it's speaking out of turn, that she has brought in other senior MPs into the conversation, like the most senior MPs into the conversation, and that they are working alongside channels and kind of knowledge that they have. So totally, without question, support there. So there's, no issues there. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Olsen.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, great project. Hey, just the executive summary, it notes that this is a community-led initiative, which is fantastic. I'm just wondering, as part of that, what is the involvement of the community boards in this? Because it covers a couple of community boards, and how are they been involved and engaged with it? Who, you know, represent the communities, of course, who are directly affected by this.
I would refer to Jenny to raise that point, but in her absence, I'm aware that the Wainuiwhenua group from an outset has had the community board as part of the wider groups that support the Wainuiwhenua project, and so that's been a key part and drive, and we report back, I think there's a standing item that's reported back to the community board every 6 weekly meeting on the updates, and I know Jenny and Amanda and myself actually went to one not too long ago to provide them an update, but Jenny has also gone on other occasions to provide that connection and update, as well as some of the previous community board members were also key people as part of the Wainuiwhenua project and the kind of working group supporting it. So very strong connections, and we'll be looking to take those forward as linked in the paper as well. We flagged the links around the development of a wider district vision, but also local Paikākāriki vision, and the links to Wainuiwhenua will be quite important as part of that journey and discussion upcoming.
Yeah, okay. Just to clarify, so one of the things that happened with the last election, local election, of course, was the areas under community boards changed. So my question is, of course, the Paparam now incorporates right the way down on the east side of the transmission gully all the way down as part of the Paparam community board now. So it's 2 community boards, it's just not Paikākāriki, it's also Paparam. And you know, Paparam haven't seen any engagement on this. And I know that I have had contact, you know, from members of the public who are now come under our board, you know, regarding this as well.
Thank you. That's good to note. Yep, that's true. It was a bit of an anomaly during the last representation review and has been challenged by some of those local residents. But yeah, certainly they get looked after by 2 community boards now.
They do, and we just want to know, very aware of that, and great point. And Councillor Halliday was at the last meeting. That said, though, we do recognise that there's an opportunity to also make sure that the wider Paraparaumu Community Board is brought into that. So we would make sure we take that back to the Chair, Jenny Rowan, and come back to you.
Thank you, good point. I'm not seeing any further questions, so I'm going to move now to the recommendations. On page 6 of Councillors' agendas, can I have a mover? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Right of introduction.
Thank you, I'll waive that.
Councillor Halliday.
Thank you, through the Chair. Look, this is a significant project and it has significant opportunity, potential opportunity, I dare say. But look, we stepped into this a while ago so that we would be able to be at the table to capitalise on this opportunity. And if we hadn't been there then, we would have been out of the loop. So, you know, Ben, when you talk about the community aspect, was this actually community driven right from the beginning, and council sort of stepped into the loop after the community started pushing this as well. But you do make a very good point with regards to us and the Paraparaumu Board now being a part of that scenario as well, which had slipped my mind too. But this is a long-term opportunity in my opinion, and you either get involved to benefit or not. We have, and I also welcome looking at the new approaches that we're looking at with regards to partnerships as well and what that might look like. I'm vested, I think council's vested, so we're on a long-term journey here, because this won't be a quick finish, but we're in the mix, and I think that's really, really important. That was Jenny's goal when this first started, as I'm well aware, and I know Sophie and the Pakokariki Community Board have been right there from the beginning as well. So I'm looking forward to see where this all goes and being able to capitalise on the opportunities that are there as they come up as well. But, thank you very much for the report.
Thank you, Councillor Halliday, and welcome back to being in person at the council table. Lovely to have you here. Councillor Hanford.
Yeah, kia ora. Just to agree with everything that Councillor Halliday has said, and also commend the staff and community members and elected representatives who have been involved in this kaupapa for many years, for it to now be at the stage where we're committing to doing further work to realise the possibilities and the potential. And I think, as Councillor Halliday said, the really exciting thing about this project for me is that it's a legacy project. It's that the next generation will kind of see this and know that it's the fruits of what were long conversations involving many people. It's an awesome example of collaboration, and also I think done wonders for building those relationships for now other projects, like for example Budge House, to have a really open channel to be addressed through. So I think there's some really exciting benefits to that ongoing collaboration. So I'm just really excited for the possibilities and the continued conversation, and just want to commend all those involved for the enormous amount of work, including Greater Wellington. Penny, if that can be passed back, that we're really grateful for that connection, and also for the partnership that will hopefully build into seeing the possibilities realised in the near future. Let's not leave it for too long, and let's get central government right on that too.
Thank you, Councillor Hanford. I'd like to say a few thanks. Apologies, Councillor Cooper. So I'd like to particularly acknowledge Jenny Rowan in this kaupapa. I remember about maybe 10 years ago going to a meeting in the meeting room I think it was at the library, and these maps were spread out on the table, and it led to getting some major stakeholders into the room. At that time, it seemed like Transmission Gully was imminently going to be finished, and that this land would go up for sale, and that there was this pressure that it would turn into lifestyle blocks, and we would lose a significant opportunity for some significant benefits for the community. So it's been a long time since then, and a lot of water under the bridge, and Jenny's just stayed with this project the whole way, and so I think she deserves special recognition. All the rest of the community who fed into the Wainuiwhenua work, there have been a number of them. I won't name them in person, but they know who they are. I'd also like to acknowledge Paul Hughes, who did quite a lot of work even prior to that, bringing this issue to the council with his Grow Paikakariki work. It provided the foundation and the visibility for this work, which has continued until now, particularly focusing on the environmental benefits of this work. And while we're on the environment, I'd like to also acknowledge Ngā Uru Ora, who've had an easement and have been planting this land for the last few years as we wait for that revocation process, so it's not going to rack and ruin. There's a whole lot of beautiful native forest growing there as we speak, thanks to their efforts. I'd also like to acknowledge the Perkins, who were the former owners of this land. I think that's appropriate to do that today. Ngāti Haumia ki Pai Kakariki, who've been heavily involved in this from the start. And it's almost like it's gone out by ripples, with them being the main representatives at the start, and then Ngāti Toa. I think this provides a wonderful opportunity for Ngāti Haumia and Ngāti Toa to work together and work out how they work alongside and with each other, and how Ngāti Haumia engages with that wider Ngāti Toa group, and that's quite significant. Along the lines of the central government conversation that's had, there have been direct inquiries about this from the Minister of Transport, as well as from our local MP, Barbara Edmonds. So certainly on that central government radar, and I get the feeling that there is a huge amount of support for this kind of thing to happen, rather than what used to be the case, which is trying to sell off surplus land for maximum profit. And that almost used to be a requirement. Considering something like this was considered to be almost illegal, because it was expected that maximum profit was gained from surplus land. And I think this project has been part of a re-envisioning of how surplus land is dealt with, and seeing the opportunities in that. And then, of course, Greater Wellington, who, since they've got on board, have just really driven this project and provided a huge amount of impetus, work, and also funding from a political and an operational level. So huge thanks to Greater Wellington and Darren Ponter, the chair, and our local councillor, Penny Gaylor, who's been right behind this, and also attended quite a lot of those Wainuiwhenua meetings. And thanks to Hamish and the staff. So, yeah, who's next? Councillor Coe.
Look, just a couple of quick comments following on from my questions. And one is, I would like to see some formality. I know there's a lot of uncertainties, but I think it's really important that we have some kind of a timeline and a project plan and some key dates, and to really get some clarity around this project when you come back, that is. And also just, acknowledging the contribution of the volunteers. There is a lot of work involved here, and can we provide some form of, remuneration in some way? Because we're just at the start of this, and there's still a huge amount of work to be done. Yeah. And I think if we're relying on those volunteers, there should be some sort of a remuneration policy or expenses policy or something like that to, we can't continue expecting that level of input from people in our community at no cost.
Thank you, Councillor Coe. Councillor Warwick.
I just wanted to say, as part of the CWB committee for a long time, and now that I'm on it as a councillor, this project enhances what we have, and as you'll see when the Steve presents it, it feeds into a network that can only benefit us with our tourism and our lifestyle, because it just connects so much us to other places outside our district. So it's awesome. And well done, Hamish, you've done a lot of work on this.
Great. So that's been moved and seconded. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Wilson. I'll now put that to a vote. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against. That's carried. Perfectly on 10:30. So we're now going to take a 20-minute break, so we've got time to get to the library and back. So we'll see you back here, hopefully, in 20 minutes.